All right, so today we have Bruce Potter as our keynote, our first keynote to sort of attempt SQL injection in the registration form, kind of. So for those that don't know, I talked a little bit about it yesterday, but we try to balance our keynotes at KernelCon. They don't have to be opposites, but we kind of feel like user attendees don't get value from hearing the same talk from a similar person 2 days in a row. So we try and balance them. There's not really a good rubric or formula for that. But our keynotes both have some sort of CISO role in the past. But I'm pretty sure that, after that diverged quite a bit from there. For instance, Wendy provided her entire talk, her entire PowerPoint, like days in advance. And it actually gave me I was more tense because I felt this immense pressure to make sure that it worked because I had it early and then it was my fault if the slides didn't work. I basically have no idea what Bruce is going to talk about. I hope I saw him connect and I think he has some material, but and we give, this is okay, mind you, we give our keynotes tremendous freedom. They're here because of who they are and what they've done and how they interact with our industry and our community. Just underlining an example of the differences of our two keynotes. So will we have, a well-considered, thematically aligned talk related to the science of hacking? Will Bruce use the hour to inform us about his next adventure and endeavors that he's doing? Will he be yelling, "Bow to my firewall," in like this vein-popping nature that we can take photos of? Only time will tell. So I'm probably supposed to speak of Bruce in an elegant and an adult way. But I've known Bruce for, what did we decide, like 15 years, something like this? And our paths have crossed at ShmooCon, of course. If you haven't heard of ShmooCon, it's this little conference in Washington, D.C. It's kind of like KernelCon that Heidi runs. You can check it out. If you like KernelCon, you're probably going to like ShmooCon. Run into him at DEF CON, of course. I distinctly remember interrupting one of Bruce's talks while he was mid-talk, specifically just so I could garner a few extra CTF points because that was a challenge that year. We've talked in the Shmoo Group IRC. The last time was probably asking about how to configure a mail server, I think. Yeah. And the list goes on. So Bruce is an accomplished, aspiring cybersecurity professional, an adult. He rides bikes, he makes things that resemble knives, and he dons many Santa hats every year. Please welcome Bruce Potter.
There we go. Oh, you've given me a microphone. This is a terrible idea. PowerPoint's trying to be helpful and giving me tips. Let me take care of that. Excellent. Oh, and it also wants access to my microphone. Yes, no? What do you think? No. So, and now it says subtitles aren't currently available. Oh, it would have transcribed me. Son of a bitch. So, quick. We're already off the rails, so quick story time before I actually give my talk. There may not be any slides after this, just so you know. Tim's not screwing around, I'm just gonna YOLO this. At DEF CON a number of years ago, I gave a talk on, I don't remember what the hell it was, but it was like the first year that they had real-time transcription services. And so you're up on stage, it wasn't the main stage, but it was some big thing. I got these big screens, and over to the side, there's like words scrolling by, and I'm a little nervous up there, I'm kind of last minute and doing some crap, and the words are scrolling by, and eventually I realize oh, those are my words. And I'm super excited because I have real-time transcription. And I think it's like a bot. I thought it was just voice recognition. So I tell the audience calmly, you can leave, I'm gonna go play with this thing. And so I'm la, 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 just saying all this shit. And so across the screen it says, la, 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 stop it now. And I realized it's a live human transcribing, and they're sick of me already. And I freaking lose it. And so then we have a dialogue with the transcriptionist, and I'm like, is it okay if I go on? She's like, oh yes, of course. And it turns out the transcription services that they run at events like DEF CON, when they do it at a technical event, you can't just throw a transcriptionist at a random technical talk, because they won't understand the lingo, the jargon, the words won't make sense. So they'd actually like drilled on past DEF CON talks for weeks ahead of time, so they knew how to transcribe the nonsense that we talk about on stage. And then they research the speakers, they know who we are, they align the different transcriptionists against the speakers. And so that night we actually got to talk to the lead person on site that was wrangling the transcription services. And the people doing the transcriptions are all over the planet, right? But the lead person is like on site to work at DEF CON. And so we got to talk to her at a party that night. And they're like, normally it is absolutely verboten for the transcription service person to engage in any way, like break the fourth wall at all. But they told them, like, at DEF CON, if the opportunity presents itself, go for it. And when I told her what happened, the woman was like, yay! We trolled a speaker. It was great. And I'm like, yeah. All right. There we go. Okay. So, anyway, this is going to be an interesting ride. This phrase strikes fear in the heart of my wife whenever I say it at home. It tends to not be like, I had an idea, let's paint a room blue. It's like, I had an idea, I would like to bike across the United States. Can you follow me so I don't die? I'm thinking about a new job. Let's go to the moon. Crazy shit like that. So this is definitely like an I had an idea kind of talk. And if you've read my bio, that wasn't actually in my bio, the job description I have. I'm actually starting a new company. I'm not here to pitch my company or anything, but I am talking to you a little bit about the journey that I think might be interesting to you. But before I say anything, I'd like to start all my talks with the same basic idea, is you shouldn't believe anything you're about to hear from me. And I've been starting my every presentation I've given since, I think, like DEF CON 8 with the same basic premise. I am, I guess, what politely call self-educated. I prefer to think like stumbling through life, figuring it out as I go along. I grew up in upstate New York, thought that was far too urban, ended up going to a state school in Alaska, where eventually I dropped out because I couldn't figure out how to graduate. I've never had an industry certificate, never had a CISP. I've taught CISP classes, which was a cute diversion. People are like, how'd you pass your test? I'm like, funny story about that. Like, it's like if any Bob's Burgers aficionados out there, the baseball team, the guy who teaches baseball to the kids, he's never played baseball in his life. I'm like, that's me. Like, I'm totally that guy. I keep changing careers. I'm really not good at finishing anything. I really like to get halfway through a house as a testament to that. I built 2 decks last year. They have a deck part, but they don't have like the side part to make it look nice. So we just got that nice redneck finish where like the squirrels run right underneath and dogs go chasing them. So that deck is emblematic of how I think about life. It's just, it's functional. It's good enough. So, and Tim was correct. Like, keynotes are weird beasts, right? Because unlike other talks here where people get up here on the merits of like an idea or a project or whatever, the keynotes are up here on their laurels. They're like, we've done cool stuff in the past, so I bet you do cool stuff on stage. You're like, that's a bold move, Tim. Let's see how this plays out for you. And sometimes they're philosophical, sometimes they're prophetic. I think in the tech universe, one of my favorite keynote presenters is Dan Geer. So Dan's been around for, jeez, I'm gonna die now. Dan's been around, I don't want to call Dan old, but he gave a keynote yesterday where he indicated he had 50 years experience in cybersecurity. Like, that's a polite way of saying I'm kind of old. But Dan's keynotes are fascinating because, one, he still releases them as like ASCII text on a web server somewhere, like it's 1993, which I really appreciate. But he also says things that, it's very well reasoned. It's sentence by sentence. He reads it, but doesn't feel like he's reading it. And it's the kind of thing you have to go back 2 or 3 or 4 times. Oh, man, the Hilton breakfast is trying to kill me. 2 or 3 or 4 times to really understand what's going on. I assure you, this presentation won't be like that. I'm going to wear this on my sleeve. You will not have to experience this 3 or 4 times to understand what's going on. Once will be absolutely sufficient for you. So, all right, with that, also, Tim was correct. I'm going to try to weave a science theme into this. He actually didn't see the slides, but he set it up very well. First of all, this is one of the funniest science memes that I've seen in a long time. I've never played with straight chlorine, but I have played with straight sodium. It likes to go boom in water. Has anyone got to play with sodium? A few people. For those that don't know, sodium by itself is really angry. You have to store it like a mineral oil because the minute it gets in with water, thank you, speaking of water, as if on cue, it explodes. Like it reacts with water and very violently. The next level down, anyone know what's below sodium in the periodic table? Or excuse me, above sodium in the periodic, below? Above. What starts with a K? Potassium. That was a terrible lead-in. So potassium is even more reactive. And in high school, when I grew up in upstate New York, the chemistry teacher had both sodium and potassium in the lab, which at the time were totally verboten, right? You were not allowed to have these things in high school chem labs. But she was, I think many of you had like crazy high school chem teacher. Yes, she was well into that category. And so the state actually went through a process where they made the schools get rid of like the highly dangerous stuff. And she kept the potassium because she didn't really know that the janitor was going to dispose of it correctly. But then she just handed the sodium to the janitor and said, "Here." And then she explained to him what it did. So it'll react very violently. And I want to underscore very violently with water. And he was like, cool. And so this is a very redneck town. Like, and when you tell something, someone's going to react very violently, their eyes get sparkly and they're like, going to grab some beer and do this. And so he waited one day, and there's no kids in school, and it was pouring down frickin' rain, and he has a mason jar of sodium, right? If you take a little sliver of this thing, you put it in water, it bam, like wake up everybody in the building. He had a mason jar of sodium. He just like walks outside, unscrews the top, and like pops this like baseball-sized thing of sodium out into the... Apparently, it was like, it got very angry, right? It just bounced around, it cleaved, and the cleaved parts bounced around, and there's just flaming sodium everywhere. Parts of it, and the thing is, for years later, he did it like in this little side alley in the school. There were black marks all over the brick on the side of the school. And it was like us, the chem teacher and the janitor that knew what happened, no one else had a clue. Like, what was that? Aliens? Like, I have no concept. But sodium chloride is table salt, right? It's the polite Bruce Banner. You know, you don't really know that he can be very angry, but as it turns out, he can be. That was the joke. There you go. So one phrase that I've heard over and over and over when you talk about science and is the idea of doing good science, right? This concept of when somebody releases a piece of research or whatever, someone gets on national news, that was good science. It's like, what the hell does that actually mean? And if you start looking in the literature to try to understand what people mean when they say good science, there's a couple of different, a number of different ways that they can interpret this. It's technically correct and proper. You follow the scientific method. It's a repeatable thing. It's actually something that other people can do. It's good in the sense that you get a letter grade of an A for actually doing a science project and not like a philosophy piece, right? Good is insignificant, like this changes things, right? This is something that has an impact on the field. It actually matters. And then there's good is like it improves the welfare of humanity, right? The ethical good idea. And the reality is, what I find is actually kind of funny, is that goodness in science turns out to actually be a qualitative statement that individuals make, right? It's based on the views of the observer, which is somewhat unscientific, right? Like at the end of the day, science is supposed to be black and white. It turns out the goodness of science is not. So this actually got me thinking. So as I indicated, I was actually looking for a new job recently and ended up starting my own company. It's a very long story. I won't bore you with it. But one of the things that happens when you start a new company is you realize you're about to have a lot more responsibility than you had the day before, right? I used to run a services company, and I will say, like, I felt a lot of personal responsibility to my employees, a lot of personal responsibility to my customers, and it's very different when you're an employee. Like, I've been a CISO for a long time, and like I feel responsible, but like this is somebody else's company, right? Like at the end of the day, like they're responsible for paying me, I'm not responsible for paying them, and so you have a very different worldview. And so now I'm like, oh shit, I'm starting a company, and I have to like think about what does it mean to be a good company. What does it look like if I want to start a company and have it be, quote, good? First of all, anyone know the previous page where the graphic was from? Bill and Ted, Strange Things Afoot at the Circle K. Okay, cool. I know I'm with my people now. Like I can relax a little bit. So goodness in the company has kind of the same kind of color associated with it. Like good is profitable, right? The Wall Street crew would consider you good if you operate in the black, you're making money, you're growing, there's a clear path to your revenue. Good is insignificant, like the company makes a difference. Now there's 2 points that don't always go together with corporations. You're profitable and you make a difference. Like we all know in our head, and I'm not going to call anyone out, but we all know personally, we've worked with companies that are clearly profitable and clearly don't do anything that we actually want, right? But you have to buy it, you have to deploy it. This industry is actually rife with those kind of products that you have to check the box, or at least all the companies that you can buy from are effectively the same. Oh, we have a comment in the audience. This is going to go well. What's up? Useful. Mm. Right. Yeah. Good as in, yes, absolutely. Like this is a thing that changes and is creating a positive outcome for me, right? And then there's the final kind of definition, like good, like you're not an asshole, right? This is a good company. People want to work there. They feel like it's a safe place to work. It's a place that they enjoy working. They enjoy their coworkers. They enjoy the process. It's welcoming, all that kind of thing. And unlike science, I would posit that good companies need to have all these characteristics, right? We should be operating in the black where we can. We should be making a difference for our customers, and we should not be assholes, effectively. That's my, my rules of business. I'm going to go to Harvard Law School and teach a class. So, and you may think, I'm not here to start a company. This is not like I came to the Holiday Inn to hear from a guy about how to make a bunch of money. This is not an MLM. Would you like to sell some firewalls? Can you be my downline? Not a lot of MLM people in the room? Okay. The reality is when we think about what does it take to be a good company, there's a lot of analogs to what does it take to be good at my job. What does it take to run a good cybersecurity program, to be a good cybersecurity analyst, engineer, whatever it is we do in this industry, the core tenets of goodness kind of transcend all the way through an organization, through every level. So I'm going to talk a little bit today about what I've been thinking about when it comes to the thing that I'm trying to build as it pertains to cybersecurity, and hopefully you pull something from it. But first, as if I haven't been on enough tangents yet, a number of years ago, I worked for a company, and they went through a rebranding exercise. And one of the things that they did is they brought in this guy, he said, we're going to document our company values. And I thought, this will be better than a root canal, worse than a root canal. I don't really know, but I think it's going to suck. And so we sit down and he's like, okay, let's talk about the things that you value in your company. And all the executives are sitting around thinking big thoughts about integrity and value and trustworthiness and all this shit. And this guy just lets them go, right? And he's like, good. And he's putting sticky notes on the board and doing all this stuff. And I'm like, this is such bullshit. And then the guy just hardcore trolls everyone. It was like, which one of those things would your competitors also not say, right? Table stakes, value, integrity. No one's going to put, we're a bunch of goddamn thieves on their value statement, right? They just assume you know what you're doing, you're ethical, you're legal, all these things. He's like, your corporate values are the things that set you apart, not the things that everyone does. And I was like, he just trolled the entire executive team. Gold star, sir. I wanted to get up and applaud. I am now interested in your values process. It was a really, and what happened after the fact is some people kind of had that aha moment of okay, values aren't necessarily the things that everyone does or the things that we do that are unique to us. Other people are like, bullshit. Right? This is all important stuff, and they couldn't get away from it. They couldn't get away from the fact that they wanted their webpage to say integrity on it. And I'm like, I've never, as a buyer of a product, gone and be like, oh, thank God you have integrity. That's the thing. Your product is psychotically expensive, but you have integrity, so I will buy that. Thank you. That's my justification for the budget. Jerks. Anyway. Really didn't have a lot of point to that. I just felt like telling a story. It's fun when you have slides that tell a story, you just kind of ramble through it. People are like, oh, that was insightful. It had nothing to do with anything, but man, that was cool. Yeah, this is every day. My wife likes to point out, this is basically every day at the dinner table. So the other thing, and I want to talk about a company I used to work at. I used to work at Expel as their CISO for a while. I'm not here to pitch or market to them. But one of the things that they did that I thought was actually really interesting is they had this document they called the palimpsest, and the palimpsest is an old school term. It's basically a document that describes a thing, but the document constantly evolves and updates over time and that kind of thing. Kind of like Confluence. But you can't really call it Confluence, because if you tell people, we're going to brief you on the Confluence, they're going to be like, but I use Notion, you know, so that's not going to be a thing for all the 3 Notion users in the room. So they had this palimpsest, and whenever someone would join, an executive would sit down with them and go over this document. It was effectively a statement of like, here's how we run the company. And it evolved. And as an executive team, we would actually periodically sit down and be like, what still belongs in here and what's changed? Because there's a recognition as companies grow and change, the things that you were worried about, the things that you hold dear can evolve, right? The things that kill you when you're small will not kill you when you're big, and vice versa. And so having an understanding and evolution of that and recognizing like it's okay for your values and things to change over time, I thought was, to me, it was pretty enlightened, right? And so that's a thing that I've tried to hold in my own, professional career, is recognizing that the goals and objectives that I had will change over time, and it's okay to kind of embrace that and run with it. So without further ado, there's now some content. That was all like the lead up. So it's been 15 minutes of me like setting the table. Okay, it's about to get a lot more boring. So if you're asleep now, it's just I'll get you a pillow. It'll be fine. This was actually going to be the entire keynote, was this one slide. And I'm serious. Like, I've had this idea rattling around in my head, and I don't know that I've described it appropriately. So buckle up and let's see where this ends up. I have this kind of thesis that every single bad thing that happens in your company from a cybersecurity perspective should be security's fault, right? And what I mean by that is if you look at this graph, and I'll walk you through conceptually what I'm trying to do here. When you're just starting to build a cybersecurity program, there's like nothing, right? There's no controls, you don't have endpoint, you don't have any of this crap installed. No matter what a user does, it's still a clown show, right? The users can try to fight and defend themselves in their own networks, but the reality is you have no security controls. And so what the user does, it doesn't matter, right? They can just run around, click on stuff, and bad things are going to happen no matter what, right? Ransomware was going to show up because you don't patch your firewalls, all this kind of crap. Now, as you get better, you start to have more controls, and you think, I am doing better, right? I can check a bunch of boxes, I have a bunch of controls, but in reality, users can now screw things up dramatically, right? Things are running on even trim, and if the users just didn't show up to work each day, we would be totally secure, right? Saturdays are blissful, right? Yay, nobody clicks on anything, there's no phishing submissions, nothing goes wrong, there's no data exfiltration, nothing happens. And I see a lot of organizations in the middle of this curve where you've done a lot of work, you put a lot of things together, and now you're like, and now we have to educate the users. I don't know if you've met a user, but that doesn't work, right? It works discreetly on an individual basis where a user can get smart, but en masse, they will not be smarter. They will not be a productive part of your security program. They will click things, and you know what? It's their job to. Right? You tell a recruiter, don't open attachments for people you don't know. They're like, I am done being a recruiter. Like, that's cool. Thank you. Thank you. Are you still going to pay me? Because I get all these PDFs every day. Every day. Some people send me RTF documents like it's 1988. What am I supposed to do with this shit? I got a La Tech document the other day. Like, that's cool. That guy's stuck in academia from the 90s. So, it's just there's just got to roll with it here, folks. It's early. The coffee's still hitting. You can't tell your users not to do things when it's clearly like their job, right? Don't execute macros in Excel worksheets. Well, it turns out Excel's like our entire accounting system, and it's all driven by macros, so what do you want me to do about that? What you need to do is find a way to facilitate the users to operate securely so that they're not actually a meaningful part of your security program anymore, right? You have to train them for a variety of reasons, not the least of which is some auditor says you have to train all your employees. But the reality is, our goal is to get all the way to the right, to build a system that's so resilient that your users can come up there and fucking hit it with a hammer every day, and then it's like, hey, it didn't break again. Cool. That was I don't know, Tim left. That was going to be your actual giftable thing there. It was me. Yeah, anyway. Do it again. No, only once. Only once. Whee! So, I think to me, when I had this realization, it was somewhat transformative because you start to have a very different way that you engage with the users, right? And you start to think about like, how do I enable them to do their work in as hostile an environment as possible and still be successful, still operate in the mode that they want to operate, to be able to not see the security controls around them, right? Because you can easily envision a universe where basically you put users in jail and be like, haha, you can't harm us now. You're like, yeah, also I can't do my job. How do you facilitate them doing their job as you go farther to the right? I think it's a real problem. Now, what's neat is, I don't think that 5 years ago, you could be all the way on the right side of this graph, right? I don't think we had the tooling. I don't think we had the processes. I don't think we had the mindset to be able to be all the way on the right. I think, honestly, like, I used to be pretty doom and gloom about this industry, like we were never going to solve some of these problems. We're solving some foundational problems. Like, we've gotten better at security operations. We've gotten, like, basic things like encrypting data. When was the last time we had a breach because a laptop got stolen? It's been a stretch, right? It used to be, there was a period of time, like every federal agency, like every week would have a post like, oops, like somebody lost, I don't know, all the social security numbers in the world, right? Like, yeah, where? Oh, a Starbucks in DC, just left his laptop. Sorry. Everything's encrypted by default. Like, we don't have data breaches because of lost laptops. And with apologies to anyone in the room that's had one of those, I'm not trying to be pejorative. I know it's not completely solved, but it is basically a free control right now, right? So things like that allow us to continue to get farther and farther to the right. And even when I do security training and stuff like that, and I tell people it's okay if you lose your laptop, some people are kind of shocked. They're like, really? Like, I'm like, well, we're out of laptop, guy. Like, please don't go leaving them. Like, don't pave your kitchen floor with them. Like, they're kind of expensive. But at the end of the day, like, it's fine. Like, you can give them, you can hand it to an APT. I don't give a shit. Anyway, no, don't do that. Like, that's. So another thing that's been somewhat striking to me over the last few years. So I worked remote pre-COVID, which is amusing because my office was a half a mile from my house. But I found my company, my people were far more productive if I wasn't around just being a jerk. So I just stayed away and I worked from home. Collaboration is something, or remote collaboration is something I've been thinking about and trying to do for a long time. And pre-COVID, there are a few organizations that did it as a matter of course, right? Like GitLab, as an example. They're a 100% remote organization. They were pre-COVID, and they're one of the few. And they were kind of like what I would call like the preeminent remote workforce organizations pre-COVID. And when COVID hit and everybody went remote, I went and talked to some friends that worked at GitLab, and I said, like, how do you think about collaboration? And what was interesting to me is most of what GitLab had thought about and done was around the asynchronous processes, right? How do you create artifacts that allow people to work asynchronously around the world? But they hadn't really thought about the technology that was used in the actual act of collaboration. And it's not like what they had done wasn't valuable. I think like they had a lot of art that other companies, and they were very public in the early days of COVID of like, here's how we do remote collaboration, here's how we do asynchronous work. But there was a lot of technological pieces about like what specific software and cameras and microphones and all these things, actually do you use? Because here's the funny thing, when we communicate, our brains have limited cycles, right? We're just a computer effectively. And we have limited cycles. And when we have to spend cycles doing things like understanding the words that you're telling me because of a bad microphone, because of a poor network connection or something like that, it removes our ability to have like higher level cognitive thought about what it is we're communicating about, right? It's I don't know how many people listen to baseball games on AM radios anymore or have AM radios anymore, but yeah, okay. Oh, we are aware. Oh. Well, it's been great, Colonel Khan. I appreciate you having me out today. Like, shortwave, yeah, shortwave, and during a thunderstorm, add in some good electrical noise. But it's hard, right? Like, it's hard to understand what's going on, and you spend all these cycles like listening and trying to figure it out, and you're really not able to enjoy it. And so I've kind of had this hypothesis, like, we need to be better about the technology that we use when it comes to collaboration. And I don't mean like, well, I do mean Slack versus Zoom versus Google Meet. Like, because even that, if on the same network connection, with all due respect to the Googlers in the room, Google Meet will suck where Zoom actually functions, right? Google Meet cannot handle lossy networks, cannot handle higher latency networks. Zoom, whatever they do, actually does. And so people, like, I always try to use Zoom. I'm not here to endorse them, but from my perspective, like when I'm working with people that are working out of their house and not everyone has a great network in their house, Zoom tends to be better than Google Meet. I haven't done a full evaluation of this, so I'm not gonna like put up a matrix or whatever. But the point is, the technology you choose and the way that you use it changes how you're able to actually interpret and interact with the person on the other side. So here's a prime example of visually how this works. So these are two photos of the same person shot at 25 millimeter, 100 millimeter lenses. 25 millimeter, 100 millimeter are the focal lengths of the lenses, and I won't bore you with the physics of what that means. But ultimately, it means that a 24 millimeter lens, I can be really up close to someone and their head's in frame, and a 100 millimeter lens, I'm farther away and their head's in frame. What that means mechanically is the farther you get from someone and keep their head the same size, as the focal length gets longer, you preserve all the natural ratios of their face. Right? If you look at this gentleman, his nose is much larger than the back of his head, right? His head is very narrow, his nose is very prominent. If this is a webcam, and this is like a normal focal length for the webcam, we play the big head, little head game, right? Every time somebody shifts in their chair, their head can change in apparent size by like a factor of 2, right? When you move from the front of your chair to the back of your chair in a Zoom meeting on a 24 millimeter focal length, your head will literally go from filling up the screen to a little dot. Right? And the person on the other end, their brain has to process that, because you know what doesn't happen when we talk normally? Hey, how's it going? No, it's really good to see you. Hey, this is great. What's going on today? Your brain isn't having to deal with all that bullshit, right? So when you shoot with a longer focal length, it becomes more natural. You know, your nose is freaking huge. It's gorgeous, man. Like, these are not thoughts you have to have. So if you look back here on this previous slide, this is my son. Our son, my wife's here, and I don't need to claim like full ownership of him, during COVID. And so we had this really long, thin room that we didn't do anything with. And so during COVID, he was in remote school. And so what we did is, way over here by the TV, we had an old video camera, and we hooked it up, and it had a really long focal length, and I could zoom in on him, and he could sit in his chair, and when he did this, his head didn't change size. Pretty cool. And then he had this big TV on the other side of the room. It was a very natural environment for him to participate, but it actually made his participation more natural to the people on the other side of the room. You know, I want to be sensitive. I'm not saying like go out and buy a bunch of equipment. You don't need to go buy stuff, but you can use existing DSLRs or old video cameras with an HDMI out or whatever. A lot of people have this gear lying around. What changes physically in your environment is the fact that you have to not be sitting up against a wall, right? Most people like, I got a monitor, me, and I sit here, and you're like, I can't put a freaking camera through the wall because it'll literally be outside. And so in order to have this kind of environment, we actually have to change our home work environments to be able to provide a camera at a long length. Same as offices, right? Like if we have conference rooms, you have to configure a conference room to allow for longer focal lengths so we have more natural framing of the people in the room. So that's video. Let's talk about audio. It's the same thing. Your brain is having to expend cycles thinking about the quality and what people are saying and cutting through all that noise just to interpret it, and it leads to kind of less cognitive ability to focus on what's actually going on. So if you look at like a standard PC mic, these are specs off of some like J-random Asus box. Frequency response is kind of garbage. For those that don't know, like the lower bounds of human hearing are about 20 hertz. The upper bound is 20 to 22,000, unless you're old and it's like 2,000. I love it when I go somewhere and my kids are like, ow, God, what is that noise? And we're like, what? No idea. Like, that light's making a horrible humming noise. Like, sure it is. In fairness, I worked in a lumber company for like 6 years, so my hearing's kind of shot anyway. But what's interesting then is it's not just the frequency response, but even the sensitivity, right? It won't pick up the subtleties of your voice. And in fact, not only will it not pick up the subtleties of your voice, our software actively suppresses the subtleties in your voice. If you go into Zoom, again as an example, there's settings for like noise suppression. Our son takes remote viola lessons, and the first thing you have to do when you take a remote music lesson is go into Zoom and turn off all the sound compression, all the sound suppression, all of that kind of stuff. Give it the natural or whatever the hell they call it. You just basically turn it all off because that's the only way that the instructor on the other side can actually pick up all the nuances of how he's playing the viola. So if you're not in a noisy environment, there's not somebody outside your house mowing the lawn or something like that, go into Zoom, go into Google Meet, turn off the noise suppression or turn it down, and people will get more of your voice inflection. They get a more natural, kind of feel for what it is you're saying. The other thing you have to be careful of, though, is microphone sensitivity can be outrageous on professional microphones, right? Like condenser mics like they use in, you see people singing into, those things have an incredible sensitivity range, and so if you leave those mics kind of like factory hot, you will literally pick up conversations in other parts of your house, right? It feels like you're a spy. You're like, I can hear you. Say it again. And it's crazy how good, like literally like keystrokes become distractingly loud. So you do have to tune it. If you do have a nicer microphone, you have to pay a little bit of attention. But these are things, there are like, 20 million YouTube videos out there to help you understand how to do this. So again, doesn't require a lot of money. Standalone mics, actually, you can get decent ones for 50 or 60 bucks. I use the Rode NT Mini USB, terrible name, and I hang it on a boom just out of frame of my calls, and the audio quality is fantastic on that mic. I really enjoy it. What cracks me up, though, so these are specialized instruments, right? Shure SM58, which is one of the kind of preeminent handheld voice microphones that are used in hotels and places all over the country. We own some of these for the con. These are like normal microphones. If I hold it like this microphone is designed to pick up my voice. If I hold it like this, my voice, I'm the same distance apart, but the microphone isn't designed like this, right? It's designed for me to use it like this. Now, we use computers every day, right? Servers, laptops, all kinds of things. We use the right tool for the right job. We maybe have used a laptop as a server, but we knew it wasn't the right choice at the time. But we're like, I gotta line around. But for the most part, we use the right tool for the right job. If you're gonna buy a microphone for use at home, understand how it works, right? This is a Yeti using a Yeti microphone, which I think is a wonderful graphic. Blue Yeti microphone is kind of like one of the ones that people really turned to during the pandemic to use. I haven't said anything security related in like 15 minutes, so I apologize for that. We're going to get back to the security. You're like, what freaking, where am I? I see like on podcasts, people using Blue Yeti mics on booms, and they're literally like pointing the microphone at them like this, except for the fact that a Blue Yeti microphone is designed to be talked to from the sides. Just because it has a dome cover doesn't mean you can use it like this. But people are like, feeling all proud of myself in my Blue Yeti, and I'm like, I can't hear you. You sound like shit. Oh, yeah. Understand the microphone that you're using, just as if you any other tool that you use it appropriately. When we give talks on how to present, this is a tool that we use, right? I use this dynamically to control how much I want you to pay attention and how much I'm just kind of riffing and I want you to go to sleep, right? Like, this is really a tool that speakers use to control how you interpret what I'm saying. When you're at home and you're collaborating, it's exactly the same thing. Use the tool in the way that it was meant to be used. So, all right, we're gonna get somewhat back to the security thing. We'll swim there together, we'll get there. Recently, so I've quit a few jobs, and and I've had feedback from my employees about working with me and that kind of thing over that time. And one of the most striking bits of feedback that I got from at least the last two jobs that I've had were people like, "You were the best boss I ever had." I'm like, okay, why? Like, I appreciate the praise, but like, I need to know why. Why is that the case? And it turns out the subtext is I'm lazy, but what they actually said was, you left me alone to do my job. See what I mean? Subtext is I'm lazy. I just didn't actually care. Like, I was like, ha ha ha. But it was really interesting to see like senior people who had, as they'd grown, always just been hounded by the people around them. What process are you doing? Tell me, I need status, I need all this stuff. And it turns out they were skilled at what they did. And what they really needed is just time and space to do the thing that I had asked them to do. Build a GRC program. Okay, cool. few months later, I had built the GRC program. Like, wow, nice work, you know. The reality is you have to support people in a way that is appropriate for the amount of experience that they have and the problem that they're facing. Not everyone needs the same level of support. Junior people oftentimes need more guidance. They need more prescriptive processes. They need to be, helped along to understand how to mature in their career. Senior people, I expect you can do your job. And in exchange, you should expect me not to bother you about it, right? I don't need to micromanage you. You're skilled. Do your thing. What was, I think, striking when they told me this is I realized like their experiences to that moment had been bosses who are up in their shit all the time, right? Who just wouldn't let them be. And so I would encourage you in your professional career, focus on making sure that you're supporting people in an appropriate amount, which includes barely at all, right? Let people do their job. Another thing I want to talk about is failure, something I'm good at. Embrace failure. So this is like a cliched thing. You hear people say this all the time, like embrace failure, like, yeah, I've heard this, fail fast, all that kind of crap. And it turns out like it's a cute phrase until it matters, right? Failure when it hurts is hard. And so I've done research for DARPA several times. And DARPA is definitely an organization that espouses like embracing failure. And again, with all respect to anyone in the room that's been involved with DARPA or potentially worked at DARPA, there were times I saw failure punished at that organization. And that is like a preeminent organization that is supposed to embrace failure. And failure that I would look at and be like, we can learn a lot from, oh, they're just screaming at them. Like it was definitely like the kind of failure where the other person was understanding in no uncertain terms that they had failed. And I'm like, boy, if an organization that like on their frickin' webpage and on challenge coins and all kinds of things says embrace failure can't embrace it when it matters, think about how often we do that in corporate America, right? We don't. We don't embrace it. We don't try to learn from it. We don't try to improve and excel. We punish. And I don't mean that happens all the time, but man, human nature, the default position is when there's failure, it's to make it hurt. And we should at least try to rise above. Even when it sucks, try to rise above. Now, on the flip side, we should be able to build and anticipate failure, right? Building modular systems, building systems with large amounts of abstraction allow us to have failure in components and then be like, whoops, that didn't work, throw it away and try again. So again, in the early days of building the system, or you have a chance to rebuild a system or something like that, build it in such a way that it's modular enough, it's fault tolerant enough that you can handle failure and learn from it, and it's not something where you throw everything out. Again, it's uncomfortable, right? And for some of us, I mean, some people are wired more to be like, cool and roll with it, and other people are wired a lot tighter than that. It's a hard thing. And it's also a thing that we can mentor each other on, because oftentimes, like, I'm sure you've seen this at work, one person lets another person down, and now there's an issue. You can step in and be like, hey, like, yes, this didn't go well. Let's work on techniques on both sides in order to make this better. So outside observers help a lot when it comes to managing failure. Good security is security that nobody sees, I think, right? On the security teams that I've been involved with, the most successful projects we've had are the ones where we were able to reduce friction to the point that people barely even realized that we were around. This is a challenge, right? Like every pop-up that comes up in front of a user is friction. Every time they have to go enroll in a system is friction. Every time that they get a no, you can't do that is friction, right? And so like I debate this. Let's take phishing prevention as an example, right? You get an email that your email security program has labeled as potentially malicious. And now a user has to make a determination, is this malicious or not, right? Or do I have to submit it for the phishing team or whatever? Where you set that dial from like blocking it so the user doesn't even know to getting the user's involvement is a hard decision, right? Because if you go too far, you're going to block legitimate emails that the user didn't even know about, and then you're going to cause a business problem. If you go too far the other way, the user's constantly having this cognitive load of like, oh my God, what about this one? What about this one? What about this one? And when you let users make risk decisions, bad things happen. Like they're either going to waste your time. So I talked to another CISO once upon a time who had a what I'll call extremely draconian anti-phishing policy, right? If you got failed the phishing test once, there was a very stern talking to. If you failed the phishing test twice, there was a very stern talking to, and they whacked your bonus in half. And if you failed the third time, you got fired. Wow. And I'm like, for real? Or is this just a threat? Like, oh no, we do this. You know what the end result was? Everybody submits basically every email they get to the security department for analysis, right? The security department is like your bespoke private email reader. Like, would you like me to print it out and read it to you, sir? Dear sir, I'm writing to you from a fund of, no, that one's spam, I'm sorry. Okay, that's a short song, but I've worked on that one for a while. I hope you enjoyed it. The reality is, like, there are decisions every day that we make in our organizations about how much friction we want to apply to our users. We may not think of it in that term, where we think of this as friction, but it is a load that we impart on our users. And sometimes we may benefit from slightly lower controls in exchange for faster velocity and helping our users move faster if we can find a way to compensate for it. So this is related. When you think about feedback, I'm not talking like, are you doing your job well or not? I'm talking about, is the system working as expected? And there's been a few stark kind of reminders that we don't always get the feedback that we want that I've experienced in the last couple of years. One, every phishing submission that you get is something that made it through all your email controls, right? And something that I tell our users very loudly is like, the more obvious the phish, the more I need you to submit it to us. Because we didn't see it, we didn't catch it, and things are not working right. Like the nuanced ones, I'll take, right? Like those are definitely like, hey, tell me about this one. But when like literally like the Nigerian prince scam gets into your inbox, that's a complete failure on our side. We were totally blind to it. So if you don't submit it to us, we literally have no idea that that control is not working right. And so, I tell them it's kind of an inverse relationship. The more obvious the phish is, the more aggressively I want you to submit it because it's probably indicative that things are not working as well as we anticipated. Zoom audio has somewhat of a similar characteristic. You don't know how you sound to the person on the other side of the call, right? I used to run these CISO coffee hour things, and I had one CISO who would join up every month. And the guy sounded like he was on the back end of an AM radio, right? It was just this awful sound, whatever. And every time he would speak, we'd all have to be like leaning in and listen. So again, like the cognitive load to understand was high, whatever. And I was like, okay, this happens every time. There must be some weird thing about their corporate network and like the controls they have just causes audio problems or whatever. And so after like 6 of these, he joined, and it was like particularly awful. Like it was barely understandable. So I emailed him. I'm like, look, normally your audio is really bad anyway, but today it was particularly bad. And he was like, what do you mean my audio is bad? I'm like, oh, we could barely understand you. He's like, are you kidding me? I'm like, no. He's like, how long has this been going on for? I'm like, 6 months. And so he showed up the next time, crystal clear audio, new mic, the whole thing. And I asked him, like, what happened? He's like, it turns out no one ever told me they couldn't understand me. I'm like, this is a CISO of like a large publicly traded company, and people are apparently like cowering in fear, like, don't tell him he sounds like shit. We need his money. And so now I make a point, like whenever I'm on a Zoom, or I use Zoom interchangeably for any kind of video call, whenever someone has bad audio quality, I stop and tell them, you sound terrible, right? Not like you have a cold terrible, maybe you do. But even like you get people like loose connections on a physical headphone, or like, you get guys that'll have a boom mic like rubbing against their stubble and they're talking and they have no appreciation. Like this is, it just makes all this god awful noise, and they have no clue. And so you have to stop them and be like, can you move the boom mic a quarter of an inch away from your face? Thank you. Again, people are never told that. So if you're in a situation where you're a receiver of a communication and that communication is not going well, pump the brakes and let them know. I'm sure they would appreciate it. It's the same with like the user experience. We have we use Mimecast for email security, right? And for those that don't know, Mimecast, when you go to the first time you use a browser to click a link that's been proxied through Mimecast, you have to enroll the browser. So basically you log in to your corporate account and then it sends you a code and then it blesses the browser with some cookie, and then you never hear from Mimecast again. It just does all its URL filtering from that point forward. We had one user come up and she was like, look, I mean, I appreciate that we have Mimecast, but it's just a giant pain in my ass. Is there anything we can do about it? I'm like, okay, cool. Like, is it blocking emails? What's going on? She's like, well, I have to, every link I click, I have to enroll the browser. I'm like, every link you click, you say? She's like, yeah. Why? I'm like, it's supposed to do that once. She's like, oh no, it does it literally every time. I do this like 20 times a day. You're like, well, that's not right. I'm like, how long has this been going on for? It's like, well, we deployed it last year, so I guess last year. It's like, like, I'm so sorry. Like, I felt really bad. But this is a person who had been in an environment where security controls had been like right in your face and annoying and difficult all the time. And they just thought, well, this is the way it is. And when we fixed it, she's like, this is so much better. I'm like, you think? Like, oh God. I felt really, but again, like, you don't see your own enterprise through the eyes of your users. So until someone gives you that signal that says like, hey, this is really painful, and you didn't intend it. Sometimes we intend it to be painful, right? But if you didn't intend it to be painful, that's, then we send out a message like, hey, who else is having this problem? And we had, 1 or 2% of our population that was like constantly re-authenticating, but they had just been the frog boiled in water. They didn't think anything of it. Frog boiled in water? Yeah. They had no idea, but it turns out they all do, and then we communicate it, and then they're like, okay, life is good. So a couple other things, and then I'll wrap this up because I'm getting long in the tooth, or some colloquialism, I guess. So I used to be a consultant by trade, and I would joke that you had to, as the first step of being a consultant was to simplify everything up to 4 boxes and 3 lines. No matter how complex the system, make it as simple as possible to ensure that we all understand that we're dealing with the same problem, and then you can derive more complex problems and understanding from that. So a prime example of this, I won't name names on this one, but I was doing work for a company, I was trying to do work for a company, a fairly large technology company that had a pretty broad portfolio of technology products. And so I went to their headquarters, and it's, normal consultant stuff. I go through like a couple of meetings, tell me about what you do, tell me about your software, your hardware, your products, whatever. And I sat through like 4 hours of like people just drawing stuff on whiteboards and being like, oh, there's this thing over here and this widget and whatever. And then somebody else would come in and like literally like erase the whole whiteboard and be like, well, there's these other widgets and all this other stuff. I was like, holy shit. I'm like, is there like, anyone that like can talk to like the whole system? Like, oh, this is the whole system. Like, okay, this doesn't set right with me. So after 4 hours of interviews and stuff, I went back home and I wrote the proposal. And in the proposal, the first thing that I do in like a business proposal is like our understanding of the problem, because I want to make sure that the potential customer and I are on the same wavelength. And so this is where I get to like, I need to bubble it up to as simple as possible to make sure that we're not misaligned, and then we'll talk about more specifics. So I made like a graphic that was like, this is your business. And I described like the technology solutions they had and their customer base and their processes all on like one slide. It was very simple, right? Like you can imagine like doing all of that in a slide this big is not going to be complicated. It's maybe more than 4 boxes, but no more than 10. I submitted it to him. The next day, the CEO of the company calls me and says, I would have paid you for the proposal. You provided more clarity about our business in that proposal than we've been able to get in, any way from ourselves. I was like, wow, thank you. Also, let's work on that first, right? Like, but what was fascinating is once we did that, we could bring together all parts of that company together to talk, to learn, to find the security vulnerabilities, to make them better, to make them whole. If we hadn't have done that step first, it would have just been whack-a-mole, right? Like, found a problem, found a problem, found a problem. How do they fit together? I don't know, but you paid me, so cool, I'm happy, right? The life of a consultant is good when you find vulnerabilities. You're like, yay, I found vulnerabilities. But at the end of it, they got something, getting back to like a good company, like that was good, like significant, right? That made their lives better. That made them a better company, not even including the vulnerabilities that we found. All right, a couple other things because they're going to boot me out of here. So this one's somewhat obvious, but I feel important to say it. The earlier you tackle security problems, the better things are going to be. Slow is smooth, smooth is fast kind of thing. Do it right from the beginning. There are too many times I've seen organizations when they grow a new function, a new capability, a new technology, everyone's admin because we don't know what we're doing. And then a year later, everyone's admin and we know what we're doing, and that's terrifying, right? And you have to go in and do account audits and fix it all and whatever. it's not that hard to do it right from day one. Do it right from day one. If you're working in a place where they don't like that, give them my number, I'll call and yell at them. It's one of those things I think people don't want to make that investment early because they don't see the risk compared to all the other things that can go wrong in a project. But the tech debt of not doing security early is incredibly high. Two last things, then we'll be done. I'm not going to talk about that one. So the last thing I want to talk about, and this is one that I've been increasingly passionate about in my career as I've gotten older, is having a broader diversity of experiences makes us stronger, not just as a company, but when you think about our domain specifically, like we all come at this from different backgrounds. That starting slide I had where I was like, no college degree, no formal certs. For some of you, that resonated. For others of you, you came through a formal program, you have industry certs. I'm not trying to be pejorative about any direction that anybody came to this. Every vector that somebody comes in this industry is important, but the more diversity in those vectors, the more diversity in socioeconomic backgrounds we have, past experiences, that kind of thing, the stronger our programs are. Full stop, right? And we need to do everything we can to increase that diversity. And that's not just like, sitting around a room and listening to people. That's from when we source people. Are we sourcing from a diverse group of candidates? Do we have interview processes that drive out bias, that are more inclusive as we interview candidates? And this is actually something that Tim mentioned yesterday when introducing Wendy. When I was at Expel, we ended up trying to think about diversity in our workforce. And Duo, before they got bought by Cisco, Doug Song had built an incredibly diverse workforce at Duo and an incredibly fantastic company. And I asked Wendy, how did this happen? And Wendy, being the amazing person she is, well, that's kind of a long conversation. Why don't you all just come out to Ann Arbor? And we took the whole Expel executive team, went out to Ann Arbor, and Duo embraced us. We talked to their DE&I folks. We talked to engineers. We talked to executives. Just talked to anybody that would talk to us about their work experience, how they came, what their story was, all that kind of stuff. And what was striking, I think, to a lot of the people from Expel that showed up is this isn't here's the one or two things that you do. It's pervasive about how we think about these problems. And ultimately, if you look at Duo, when you look at the success they had, it was in no small part to the fact that Doug, through his own kind of self-admission, built kind of an island of misfit toys, right? It was all these people from all these different backgrounds. But what they did is they built a very accessible product, a very user-centric product that really made a difference in people's lives. And so Duo, I'm not a Cisco shareholder. I'm not here to try to make Wendy and Doug feel better. But at the end of the day, they made a product that was significantly good, right? That was a good company. It made a difference in people's lives, made a difference in people's company. And it turns out it was profitable, and they had a very good sale to Cisco. So, at the end of the day, I think that was, they're a good kind of beacon to follow. So with that, that's the entirety of my talk. There's a Mario theme here at the end too. So, I tied it all together, Tim, man. I got the Mario thing, I got the science thing. So is that sufficiently random for you? All right, there you go. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Bruce.